disruption and job losses. Announced in 2018 under the guise of national security, these tariffs were intended to revitalize domestic production and shield us manufacturers from foreign competition. However, the outcome has been far from what was promised. Instead of creating sustainable jobs and boosting production, the policy triggered a cascade of unintended consequences that have hurt the very workers it aimed to protect. When the tariffs 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum were first introduced, there was a brief spike in demand for domestically produced metals. This short-term boost gave some companies like U.S. Steel a temporary advantage, as imported metals became more expensive. But this initial success quickly unraveled. The increased cost of raw materials rippled through the economy, affecting downstream industries such as automotive, manufacturing, construction, and consumer goods. Companies that rely heavily on steel and aluminum faced soaring input costs, forcing many to either raise prices or move operations overseas to remain competitive. One of the most glaring failures of the tariff policy is the lack of reinvestment in modernization and infrastructure within the U.S. steel industry. Despite the temporary market protection afforded by tariffs, major producers like US Steel did not use the opportunity to upgrade aging facilities or invest in new technologies. Instead, they focused on short-term profit maximization, including stock buybacks and executive bonuses. Aging plants, some over 80 years old, continued to operate inefficiently, with high maintenance costs and outdated technology. Without significant capital investment, the U.S. steel industry remained on the global stage. Foreign competitors, particularly China and India, adapted swiftly to the new trade landscape. They rerouted their exports through third countries, effectively circumventing the tariffs while maintaining their presence in global markets. This strategy allowed them to undercut U.S. producers in both domestic and international markets, further weakening the competitiveness of American steel. Meanwhile, domestic buyers found themselves paying higher prices without any corresponding improvement in product quality or availability. The human toll of this policy failure has been devastating. Thousands of workers across the country, particularly in steel towns like Granite City, Illinois, Fairfield, Alabama, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, have lost their jobs overnight. Layoffs came suddenly and without warning, often delivered via email at odd hours. These communities, once proud hubs of industrial activity, now face economic uncertainty and declining prospects. Small businesses that depended on the steel industry, from local restaurants to auto repair shops, have also suffered due to reduced consumer spending. Even the Trump administration's own economic advisors privately acknowledged the flaws in the tariff approach. Internal reports warned that while there might be short-term gains in isolated sectors, the long-term costs would outweigh any benefits. The Commerce Department admitted that the net impact of the tariffs was unclear and potentially harmful to the broader economy. Yet the political narrative persisted, with Trump continuing to tout the tariffs as a win for American workers, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Behind the scenes, lobbying efforts played a significant role in shaping the tariff policy. Industry groups like the American Iron and Steel Institute spent millions pushing for aggressive import restrictions. Their pitch was simple: tariffs would allow them to rehire workers, restart plants, and reinvest in American manufacturing. But reality proved otherwise. While there was a small bump in employment, exemptions were granted to large multinational corporations, giving them an unfair advantage over smaller domestic firms. The situation worsened when Stellantis, formerly Chrysler, announced a temporary shutdown of key production facilities in Canada and Mexico following the implementation of new 25% tariffs on imported vehicles and auto parts in April 2025. This decision directly impacted approximately 900 U.S. workers at supporting plants in Michigan and Indiana. The Windsor assembly plant in Canada and Toluca assembly plant in Mexico were paused for 2 weeks and an entire month respectively, causing supply chain disruptions that affected the entire American automotive industry. Trump's response to these developments revealed strategic thinking behind the tariffs. Rather than viewing the layoffs as a policy failure, he framed them as necessary pressure on manufacturers to consider their global production strategies. His administration argued that the tariffs would ultimately force companies to manufacture. Trump signed executive orders